Hey, it's James from Marketing for Restaurants here, and welcome to episode 112 of Secret Sauce, the restaurant marketing podcast. Pub, club, bar, and hotel marketing for fun and profit.
Some restaurants are quiet, lose money, and the owner works 70 hours a week. Other restaurants are busy, profitable, and the owners work a few hours a day. What's the difference? They have a secret sauce. Join James from Marketing for Restaurants as he helps you come up with your recipe for restaurant success. Your secret sauce.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's topic is going to be an interesting one that we've been thinking about doing for a little while now. And it's, despite the long title, it's really quite simple. We've called it Pub, Club, Bar and Hotel Marketing for fun and profit. Really, we're looking at those bigger venues that are a little bit different in that the fact that they've probably got a lot more seats, maybe 200, 300, 400 seats, multiple rooms within the location, and multiple things going on. So there could be a place where people are drinking, there could be a place where people are having food, and there could be a place where you've got maybe a live band or a DJ going on as well. So lots of things to think about it. And one of those things that can be, it has its own nuances when you do the marketing for it. So we wanted to delve into that and sort of share some of the things that we've learned from some of our customers. Now, before we get into that, though, a couple of things. Firstly, public service announcement. If you're getting anything out of the podcast, and we know that, there's a few people out there who are listening now, we're up to 350,000 downloads of the podcast, which is pretty cool. So thank you for everyone who's been downloading, and to all of our loyal listeners, thank you very much for your support. If you haven't left a review on iTunes, then please leave that review in there. It really does help us to get the word out. This, like Frollo and Forbes and our gift certificate system, these are free things that we give away to help restaurant owners to be able to build the kind of business that they always wanted. So we don't get any money out of doing this. Obviously, we do it for marketing purposes, but also, our BHAG here is to make a meaningful difference in people's lives. And it's really quite heartwarming getting the emails from people who are probably never going to be our customers, but they'll say, I just listened to this podcast, it really resonated with me and it's really helped me to change something in the restaurant. I think that's really cool. One little interesting follow-on. So we spent a bit of time talking about online ordering. I think it's a really interesting space, very, very dynamic at the moment. Talking to one of our customers who's using Uber Eats, he tried an interesting experiment. He put all of his prices up 30% across the board to try and win back some of the margin that he was losing through the massive commission that Uber Eats was charging. Now, the interesting thing was he had zero impact on revenue. So obviously he lost some of his customers. They've gone somewhere else. But the big thing was from a revenue point of view, and we're talking probably around 20-25% of his revenue was coming from Uber Eats, it's now profitable. So this is the point where he is actually able to be comfortable with the arrangement that he's got with Uber Eats. Now, it's not an arrangement that he's happy with because obviously he doesn't get the customer contact details. And he's a little bit uncomfortable by the fact that he's got to charge such a massive premium. But at the end of the day, you've got to do what you've got to do. And I don't think it's going to be sustainable. You certainly can't be shipping out items at 30% when you're paying 30% commission. Crazy bananas. But I just thought I'd pass on that feedback that it was revenue neutral for him to do that. So obviously your mileage may vary, but I thought that was really interesting feedback from a real world example where someone's put the price up and obviously his customers are prepared to forego the value that they were getting as a payoff for the convenience that they get with the meals being delivered to them. So interesting time of year now in the Southern Hemisphere. We're definitely into autumn. Winter is coming. The death grip of that it's going to have over revenue for restaurants out there is only going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. Here in sunny Melbourne, we started to have some of those really cold days. We've started to have a bit of rain. Northern Hemisphere, of course, the death grip is releasing. So customers are sort of shaking off, waking up out of their slumber and slowly getting back to the restaurants. And we can see that through the bookings numbers and orders data that we see as well. Just as people are starting to open up their wallets with our Northern Hemisphere customers, and it's really starting to get interesting in the Southern Hemisphere. So for all of our Southern Hemisphere customers, you need to be thinking about those with the significant winter variations. And, the further south of the equator you go, the deeper those variations are. You need to be thinking about what your plans are and what your reserves are that you've got. Obviously, it affects some restaurants more than others. It's really interesting looking at the data from a global perspective. It's a Saturday here where I'm recording, and we had a support ticket came in, which I thought I would just answer very quickly for a customer, and a new sign up in Thailand. Now, Thailand, we would expect, we don't have a lot of data from Thailand, but we would have thought probably less so because of the fact that the temperature tends to be a little bit more even. Be interesting to see how they go over that period. But definitely in places like Melbourne, the southern parts of South America, very, very seasonal in regard to customer numbers for most restaurants. Now, pubs, clubs, bars, and hotels. So what we're talking about is the conglomeration of businesses where there are multiple focuses across the venue. So we're looking at the larger venues, a lot more seats, where food isn't the main attraction that people are coming to. Or it may be, but it also may not be. So there'll obviously be the imbibing of ales and spirits, which is all good fun. And there may also be a focus on live entertainment or DJs or, getting some people in to stay up till the wee small hours of the night, dancing their bodies away. So the question is, how do you market that? Now, it's interesting. It's a very interesting question because and I'll call it a pub moving forward, so just take it as that multi-attraction venue. That's what we're going to be talking about for this podcast. We'll see how we go. It might be a 2-podcast episode. There's some big benefits that you've got when you've got a venue like that. Because of the fact that it's a large number of seats, then you've generally got larger revenue to play with. So you may have a dedicated marketing person in the pub. You're much more likely to be able to afford a professional photographer. You're much more likely to be able to afford a Facebook budget. But from talking to some pubs out there, it's not all plain sailing. And that's because there are a lot of issues with it. Firstly, I did some research and I wanted to have a look at what some pubs and clubs were out there doing. And it's interesting. You have the same sort of issues that you have in the small restaurant space. So there are some places that don't have a website. Now, if they don't have a website, then they're missing out on all of the Google mapping loving that they could be getting. The local traffic who don't know about their pub, they're going to be looking for something to do, somewhere to go, something to eat. It's a lot more difficult to find that business if you don't have a website because it doesn't go into Google mapping quite as neatly. Some of them only had a Facebook page, and whilst they had large Facebook followings, very difficult to reach out to them, very difficult to take bookings potentially, also very difficult to remarket to them. And that's a fundamental part of the thing that you want to be able to do. My biggest concern with a Facebook-only strategy is that the fact that you tend to be post-driven. So if I'm interested in a certain aspect of your business, it's going to be very hard for me to find that. I'm going to have to go through and trawl through your timeline to see, yeah, they do have craft beers in this pub, rather than just clicking on the craft beer tab. So something to think about there. Now, the next part of the story is the fact that if you've got a large venue, if it's a 500-seat venue, which is fantastic, so much opportunity, so many things that you can do, so much rent. Now, depending on where you are, depending on the location, depending on your landlord, what is the rent like? And some of the pubs that we've been talking to are paying astronomical rents. So they have to be peddling pretty damn hard just to be able to pay the landlord on time. Then, of course, they've got wages on top of that. Then, of course, they've got food and all of the other costs. Often there's an element of security if it's more of an alcohol-focused type pub, which most of them are. So a lot more costs in there. But we are seeing that some of them are paying lease rates that are, significantly higher than a similar size restaurant. And a higher percentage of revenue. And when you start having a higher percentage of revenue, that's when the warning bells start going off that you need to be doing something about the venue. Now, the next problem that people run into is, who do you market to? Who is your core customer? Who is the ideal customer that you want to come into the location? And this can be such a complicated story because of the fact that there is no correct answer to it. The kind of person who's going to be in your pub at 1 a.m. is very, very, very different to the kind of person who's going to be in there in 9 hours' time at 10 a.m. or even at 6 a.m. Hopefully they're not the same person. So you need to be thinking about how you're going to come up with a multi-channel, multi-targeted marketing campaign to be able to attract the kind of people that you want for the kind of events that you're running throughout the day as the day progresses, because your morning customer will be different to the lunch customer, different to the dinner customer, different to your night customer. And that's the big thing that you need to be thinking about. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend a bit of time breaking down the process that we use and that pub owners use to be able to successfully market to their customers. And of course, some of the things that are unique to a pub that enables them to do some pretty funky things that can make a massive difference to the revenue. Now, the first thing that you want to be sort of looking at is the demographics of the area. For a small restaurant, this is something that's fairly important, but it's not absolutely crucial because it may be only a small number of tables that you're trying to fill on a daily basis. As the size of the venue gets bigger, your catchment, your total addressable market, the number of people within the area who are going to come to your venue becomes increasingly important because you want to be getting in enough people to be able to make it profitable for each and every night of the week. If you've got a 400-seater venue, that's a lot of people that you've got to be getting in 7 nights a week, 52 weeks of a year. So you really need to start thinking about what it is, how the market, how the demographics of your local area breaks down. The easiest way of doing this is looking at either census data or going to your local council and finding out what data that they've got to help business owners. And a lot of this information is available free. There's a couple of things that you're really sort of looking at. One is age groups. There's no point running a really hip music type business if you've got predominantly retirees in your local area. The other thing that's really important, and we've seen this firsthand from restaurants that we've been talking with, is that in an area that's a little bit socioeconomically challenged, you don't want to be running a fine dining business. So how much money do people have to spend? That's going to give you an indication of the kind of experience that they're looking for and whether they're going to be able to afford it or not. That's a really big question that you want to answer before you open the doors or before you buy a pub. One thing that's really important to remember about that, though, is that you don't want the tail to wag the dog. What is it that you're passionate about? What is it that your strengths are? That is going to play into the way that you should be running the business rather than this is the market that we've got here. This is one of these things that knowing how many people there are within a certain distance of your pub, knowing how old they are, knowing how much money they've got, that's all really good to know, but it shouldn't be the final deciding decision around what it is that you're going to do, because if it's not what you want to do, then it's something that you're not going to be passionate about, and that is going to come through in everything that you do if it doesn't have that passion. As the owner of the business, as the leader of the business, you need to bring that passion 24/7. You need your passion to be inspiring your team to have that passion to look after each and every one of your customers. If you haven't got that passion, really hard to fake it every day, and it leads to burnout, I think. It just makes it a lot more stressful if it's not something that you completely love doing. The next thing to do is to have a look at your revenue split. How much are you getting from food? How much of it's from beverage? Obviously, in a pub, beverage is a lot more important than your typical restaurant. It could be the mainstay of the profitability. It could be where the whole game is won or lost, depending on the economics and what you're able to charge and the number of people that you're getting through the door. And of course, we see this in rural or country pubs as well, where that revenue mix can be a lot more constrained by the fact that the demographics that were there maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago aren't there. And it's very interesting when you look at some rural towns where you can see that there were 4 or 5 pubs in the area, and now there's only one pub, and that's hanging on by the skin of their teeth. That really highlights the change in demographics and in the population that was able to support all of those pubs all those years ago. Now, not so much. You need to be thinking about that and how that's going to play out for your customers. Obviously, then you need to be thinking about the breakdown of tourists versus regulars. And I think the big thing that you want to be thinking about when you ask that question is, because I hear it all the time, oh, we don't get any tourists. Okay, why don't you get tourists? Well, they just don't come to our restaurant. Okay, do you want tourists to come to your restaurant or your pub? There's a lot of ways that you can do it. And Facebook, you can target people who are traveling in your local area, within X number of miles, who are traveling from overseas. Now, if you want to put an offer in, get an authentic Aussie beer, or, come up with some sort of experience, come up with some sort of offer, show us your passport, or, show us all sorts of things that you can do with that, so that you can take that, well, we don't get any tourists, to maybe 10% of your customers being tourists. What would that do? What would that sort of lift in revenue be? And I always think, how do you become that, if you go to this town, then one of the must-do things is to go to this restaurant or go to this pub. What is it that you can do that's going to really encapsulate what it is about your local community? And the thing that's really interesting about this is that you don't have to do anything different. If you've got an authentic rural type pub, then people will buy that experience. Oh, I went to an authentic pub and I spoke to some people from the local area and they talked about farming. Or, I went to a inner city pub and we did something that, is just very that city, very Melbourne, very Chicago, very Singapore. What is it that you can do? How do you get that reputation? How do you build that reputation so that you can have a steady stream of customers coming through who are tourists looking for that experience? And remember, where there's experience, there's margin. People are prepared to pay for that. They're prepared to pay for it because they spent a lot of money to get to wherever you are. And so they want to make sure that they're getting the best value for money. And that means if they can go and have an authentic Aussie beer or an authentic, Chicago type experience, or wherever your city is, that can be really powerful. Because not only can you can get a reputation for it, be on one of those tourist lists, linking into the tourist boards. This is an experience that's going to add value to anyone who comes to our city. Oh, wow, we'll start getting people to come here so that they think that the city is a bit more exciting than it could have been. Then you've got other people helping you to market your business. And this is one of the things that we're going to come back to a few times, because with a pub, there's a lot more opportunity to be out there doing this sort of thing. Now, with your regulars, different kind of value proposition, different kind of marketing required. With a tourist, there's some towns that I go to, maybe once a year or every 2 or 3 years. It's been a while since I've been to San Fran. Wouldn't mind going back there soon. There are places that I would consider myself to be a regular, but I might only go there every 5 years. You know what? You don't want to be hanging around waiting for me to come in and open my wallet. It's going to be a long time between drinks, literally, if that's the kind of thinking that you've got. For your locals, for your regulars, the key metric you need to be thinking about is the number of times that they visit. So what are you doing to give them a new reason to come into your pub? And how do you get that message out there to them? So lots of things. You might have a beer of the month. You could have beer of the week. You could have beer of the day even. Rotate them through and get that message out. So just off the top of my head, we are going to showcase the 365 of Australia's best craft beers. So every day we're going to have a new craft beer for you to sample. It's going to be our special. We're going to have it for $5 a bottle. Every day we've got a new one coming in. These are the 7 that we've got coming up over the next week. Now, I literally came up with that idea just then. Doesn't sound like too bad an idea. It's going to create buzz. It's going to create a sense of community as people are sort of, you're going to be dealing with 365 craft breweries. I'm hoping that there's 365 craft breweries out there. There probably is in Australia. Let me just Google that. That was lucky. 637 according to craftbeerreviewer.com. 637 craft beer breweries. So that's a big opportunity there for you to be able to come up with something that any sort of thing with a rotating menu. So it might be, when you're looking at food, often seasonal. What's the special of the day? How do you get that message out? Now, obviously, you're going to be thinking about something like Instagram. You're going to be thinking about targeted Facebook ads. Of course, your email list. This is a really big and important part of some restaurants and pubs that are quite successful. And we've talked about it in the past. You've got to have an email list. And this comes back to one of the things that I find really interesting when you look at pub marketing. They will use something like Dimmy or now The Fork or one of these, Open Table. They're paying every day. They're paying for people to come into their restaurant and make a booking or into the pub. And they're often not getting the customer contact details. So it denies you the ability to turn them into a repeat customer. And on top of that, these are people who are coming in probably because of your marketing. This is a tax on your marketing. And it's a tax that costs you twice. Because A, it's going to cost you the customer's contact details. And B, it's going to cost you the per seat charge that they're charging. So, and we've seen, The Fork charging $1 a seat. That could be madness because we know that some pubs, if you've got a 400-seater restaurant in there, and, that's a pretty big one, but there's some that are definitely bigger than that, you might be paying, $200 a day in fees and not getting the customer contact details of any of those people who book. That is absolutely crazy. Now, what I might do is I might leave it there and we'll come back next week with the segmentation process that we take. And so what we're going to be doing is looking at all of the activities in your pub and then creating the micro segments, just like we do for a restaurant. You do it for a pub around the activities that you've got. And the cool thing about this is that you only need to get a few of these segments right to make a massive difference on your revenue moving forward. So that's it for this week. You have a busy week and we'll talk next week. Bye.
Want more customers for your restaurant, cafe or takeout? Every month, our marketing tools and information are used by thousands of restaurant owners just like you to help them find more customers and turn them into repeat customers. All of our tools and information is designed specifically for restaurant owners. We know you don't have a lot of time to spend marketing or learning complicated procedures, so our tools are quick and easy to use. If you're looking to increase your revenue and profits or want to work less hours, check out marketingforrestaurants.com.